Jaya Gopi Jana Gopi Jana Jaya Gopi Paramahamsa Prabhupada Sutara Sutashi Shimanas Bhagavan Grace. They say Bhakti Vedanta Goswami Maharashtra Prabhupada Ki. Gaur Premananda Haribol. All glories to the Samal devotees. All glories to the Samal devotees. All glories to the Samal devotees. All glories to Shri Shri Guru Shri Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, chapter 17. We'll be reading this morning text number 28 through 30. Iti Dharmam Mahim Chaiva Sanvayatva Maharata Nishitam Adate Kargam Kalaye Dharma Itavi Iti Dharma Mahim Chaiva Iti Dharma Mahim Chaiva Santvayatva Maharata Santvayatva Maharata Nishitam Adate Khadgam Nishitam Adate Khadgam Kalaye Dharma Hetave Kalaye Dharma Hetave Niti Dharma Mahim Chaiva Sanvayatva Maharata Nishitam Adade Khadgam Nishadam Adade Khadgam Kalaye Dharma Hetave
Okay. Iti dharmam mahim chaiva.
Iti Dharmam Mahim Chaiva
Santavayat
Sarvatva Maharatha
Nishatam Adade Khadgam
Nishatam Adade Khadgam
Kalaye Dharma Hetave
Kalaye Dharma Hetave Iti Dharma Mahim Chaiva
Iti dharmam mahim chaiva
Santvayatva Maharatha
Santvayatva Maharatha
Nishatam Adade Khadgam
Nishatam Adade Khadgam
Kalaye Dharma Hetave
Kalaye Dharma Hetave
Iti dharmam mahim chaiva
Iti Dharma Mahim Chaiva
Santvayatva Maharatha
Santvayatva Maharatha
Nishatam adade khadgam
Nishatam Adade Khadgam
Kalaye dharma hetave
Kalaye Dharma Hetave
Iti dharmam mahim chaiva
Iti dharmam mahim chaiva
शान्त्वयित्वा महारथः
shantvaitva maharatah
निशातमादते खड्गम्
nishatam adade khadgam
कलये अधर्महेतवे
kalaye dharma hetave.
इति धर्मं महिंसेवा
Iti dharmam mahim chaiva
सन्त्वायत्व महारथः
santvaitva maharatah
निशातम् अदाते खड्गम्
nishatam adade khadgam
कलये धर्महेतवे
kalaye dharma hetave.
Iti.
Iti.
Thus,
Dharmam,
the personality of religion,
the personality of religion,
Mahim,
Mahim,
the earth,
the earth,
Cha, also, Eva, as,
Santvayitva,
after pacifying,
Maharatha,
the general who could fight alone with thousands of enemies,
the general who could fight alone with thousands of enemies, Nishatam, sharp, Adade,
took up,
Khadgam,
sword,
Kalaye,
to kill the personified Kali,
to kill the personified Kali,
Adharma, irreligion,
Hetave,
the root cause. Translation. Maharaj Pariksit, who could fight 1,000 enemies single-handedly, thus pacified the personality of religion and the earth. Then he took up his sharp sword to kill the personality of Kali, who is the cause of all irreligion. Translation again, please repeat. Maharaj Pariksit, who could fight 1,000 enemies single-handedly.
Who could fight 1,000 enemies single-handedly?
Who could fight 1,000 enemies single-handedly.
Who could fight 1,000 enemies single-handedly?
This is a verse for Kshatriyas, right? Thus pacify the personality of religion and the earth.
Thus pacify the personality of religion and the earth.
Then he took up his sharp sword
Then he took up his sharp sword
to kill the personality of Kali,
to kill the personality of Kali,
who is the cause of all irreligion.
who is the cause of all religion.
So we have 3 purports, so we'll read them along with the verses, but we will omit the Sanskrit. That's okay. Maharaj Pariksit, purport. As described above, the personality of Kali is he who deliberately commits all kinds of sinful acts which are forbidden in the revealed scriptures. This age of Kali will certainly be full of all activities of Kali. But this does not mean that the leaders of society, the executive heads, the learned and intelligent men, or above all, the devotees of the Lord, should sit down tightly and become callous to the reactions of the age of Kali. In the rainy season, certainly there will be profuse rainfalls, but that does not mean that men should not take means to protect themselves from the rains. It is the duty of the executive heads of state and others to take all necessary actions against the activities of Kali, or the persons influenced by the age of Kali. And Maharaj Pariksit is the ideal executive head of the state, for at once he was ready to kill the personality of Kali with his sharp sword. The administrators should not simply pass resolutions for anti-corruptional steps, but they must be ready with sharp swords to kill the persons creating corruptions from the angle of vision of the recognized Shastras. The administrators cannot prevent corrupt activities by allowing wine shops. They must at once close all shops of intoxicating drugs and wine enforce punishment, even by death, for those who indulge in habits of intoxication of all description. That is the way of stopping the activities of Kali, as exhibited herein by Maharaj Pariksit the Maharata. Text 29. When the personality of Kali understood that the king was willing to kill him, he at once abandoned the dress of a king and under pressure of fear completely surrendered to him, bowing his head. Purport. The royal dress of the personality of Kali is artificial. The royal dress is suitable for a king or kshatriya. But when a lower class man artificially dresses himself as a king, his real identity is disclosed by the challenge of a bona fide kshatriya like Maharaj Pariksit. A real kshatriya never surrenders. He accepts the challenge of his rival kshatriya, and he fights either to die or to win. Surrender is unknown to a real kshatriya. In the age of Kali, there are so many pretenders dressed and posed like administrators or executive heads, but their real identity is disclosed when they are challenged by a real kshatriya. Therefore, when the artificially dressed personality of Kali saw that to fight Maharaj Pariksit was beyond his ability, he bowed down his head like a subordinate and gave up his royal dress. Text 30. Maharaj Pariksit, who was qualified to accept surrender and worthy of being sung in history, did not kill the poor surrendered and fallen Kali, but smiled compassionately, for he was kind to the poor. Purport. Even an ordinary kshatriya does not kill a surrendered person. And what to speak of Maharaj Pariksit, who was by nature compassionate and kind to the poor. He was smiling because the artificially dressed Kali had disclosed his identity as a lower class man. And he was thinking how ironic it was that although no one was saved from his sharp sword when he desired to kill, the poor lower class Kali was spared by his timely surrender. Maharaj Pariksit's glory and kindness are therefore sung in history. He was a kind and compassionate emperor, fully worthy of accepting surrender, even from his enemy. Thus, the personality of Kali was saved by the will of Providence. Om Ganatavarandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manopishtam Shtapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Upakadamayam Nidati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Gurun Shri Yuta Padikamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Shri Rupam Sakrajatam Sahakana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sudevam Sadvaitam Savadutam Purajana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Bhagam Krishna Padam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sudevam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So, before jumping into this verse, just want to thank all of the devotees here for being present. and being so enthusiastic. We have a whole lot of people watching. And all the devotees on YouTube who are watching, enthusiastic to develop their Krishna consciousness and helping create this sacred space, this environment whereby our devotional creepers can flourish and be nourished and eventually return back home, back to God. So this is the power of association with devotees. And just right now, before this program, this Bhagavatam class, we were worshiping the person Bhagavatam. Srila Prabhupada was a living example of the Bhagavatam. And now, by his blessings, we get the opportunity to read the book Bhagavatam, which is a literary incarnation of the Supreme Personality of God. So by his mercy, by the mercy of the succession, by the mercy of all the Vaishnavas, we're now given this opportunity where we can dive deep into the pages of Srimad Bhagavatam. So thank you again all for your presence, your desire to be Krishna conscious. So this is a fascinating section of Bhagavatam. And there are, it's fascinating just not from a philosophical and intellectual point of view, but it's also fascinating in terms of its contrast and moods that we have. In the verse 29, we have this. Verse 28, we have this very chivalrous verse. This is one of Krishna's 31st qualities. He's heroic. He's ready to perform heroic deeds. And this, of course, is exemplified, reflected in his devotees, like Maharaj Pariksit, who is ready to at all costs perform his duty, his prescribed duty as a Kshatriya, to chastise the personality of Kali. And then, when we come to verse 30, we see how all of a sudden this heroism is then being balanced by his compassion. His Maharaj Pariksit, who was qualified to accept surrender and worthy of being sung in history, did not kill the poor surrendered and fallen Kali, but smiled compassionately. For he was kind to the poor. So we find this as we study the character of great devotees, the presence of almost seemingly different qualities. One of compassion, at the same time one of heroism, of willing to kill an offender. And as I was reading this verse, I was wondering, this is an interesting debate. I can see a debate going on right now between, let's say, for right now in the temple we had representatives from Amnesty International, okay, and they were here present. And let's say we had the representatives of the Congress of Singapore in Japan. In Singapore, you have death penalty for drug trafficking. Over a certain threshold, if you traffic drugs, you get a death penalty. And in Japan, this has also happened. It's been about 10 years, but 10 years ago, someone from Morocco was caught with a certain amount of drugs, metamorphine, something, and he was given the death penalty. And if you look at the statistics of these nations, Japan and Singapore, they have the lowest rate of murder in the world. So that would support an argument that yes, we must implement capital punishment for drug trafficking. And of course, Amnesty International, but then they would counter and they'd say, but no, actually, strict laws never change anything. And they would argue. They would, of course, bring their statistics, and their lawyers would have so many um, uh, arguments. Even from a devotional point of view, we could argue, well, Jagai and Madhai, they were drunkards. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, was right there in Navadvip. Why didn't he kill them? So, the point is that what I find very interesting about this verse is how Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita, Vishyavanivartante naraha sadena rasavajam sopiya sapram jashta vartate. That the embodied soul may be restricted from sense enjoyment, though the taste for sense object remains. But ceasing such engagement by experiencing a higher taste, it becomes fixed in consciousness. So the question is, and when do we take this decision to reform someone or reject someone? To try to reform an alcoholic or a drug trafficker, or kill an alcoholic or drug trafficker. This would be would make a great devotee play to have this conversation. So I would just wanted to, because of the nature of this purport, these three purports, I'd like to read the purport it's a very short purport, sorry, Hare Krishna, okay. To this 59th verse from the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita, which I just quoted. I'll read it again. Though the embodied soul may be restricted from sense enjoyment, the taste for sense objects still remains. But ceasing such engagements by experiencing higher taste is fixed in consciousness. Purport. Unless one is transcendently situated, it is not possible to cease from sense enjoyment. The process of restriction from sense enjoyment by rules and regulations is something like restricting a diseased person from certain types of edibles. The patient, however, neither likes such restrictions nor loses his taste for edibles. Similarly, sense restriction for some spiritual process like Ashtanga Yoga in the matter of yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, etc. is recommended for less intelligent persons who have no better knowledge. But one who has tasted the beauty of the Supreme Lord Krishna in the course of his advancement in Krishna consciousness no longer has a taste for dead material things. Therefore, restrictions are there for the less intelligent neophytes in the spiritual advancement of life. But such restrictions are only good until one actually has a taste for Krishna consciousness. When one is actually Krishna conscious, he automatically loses his taste for pale things. So the reason why I bring this purport to light is that, for example, in Japan and Singapore, when they execute someone, they do it by public hanging. And that has a very deep emotional impact. When people walk through the streets, you see someone hanging from a rope. That sends a very strong message that yes, we should not commit these activities. We should not commit crime. But unless the governments are able to give people a higher taste, actually Srila Prabhupada explains in the Bhagavad Gita, he says that unless one preaches Krishna consciousness, that is violence. To preach Krishna consciousness is the greatest form of non-violence. Because it is only by Krishna consciousness, as Srila Prabhupada said here, that we can give up these lower tastes. The taste, the inclination to burn that desire to commit sinful activity. So it's not only the responsibility of governments to be strict, to curb the influence of Kali, but they also have to take up the responsibility to kill the demonic mentality. This is the purpose of the incarnation of the golden avatar of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Ki Jai! He came to kill. When Nityananda got on his hands and knees, actually it's a very beautiful pastime, I'm sure you all know. When Madai, he picked up the clay pot and he threw it at Nityananda. And then Jagai said, well, Madai, why did you do that? And he was upset. And his brother, even though they were both dacoits, they were both partners in crime, right? Committing all kinds of sinful activities. He said, why did you do that? And when Nityananda was lying there bleeding, he heard Madai have this conversation he heard Jagai have this conversation with Madai. And then when Lord Chaitanya came, and he was prepared to kill, just like Maharaj Pariksha was prepared to kill Kali. Right? So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu invoked his Sudarshan Chakra and was ready to chop off his head on the spot. Right? Nityananda said, Mahaprabhu, wait a minute. Jagai, his brother, he intervened. No. And everyone in Kali Yuga is of this mentality. So, my dear Lord, please, show your kindness. Rather than invoking your Sudarshan Chakra, invoke your compassion. And with the sword of your compassion, let us see how you can kill the demonic mentality. There's a beautiful little story as a little children's fable. One time, this man was the sun and the wind were having an argument. Who's more powerful? So this man, he was walking along, and the sun, the wind said, "No, I am more powerful. Just watch me. I am now going to blow off his coat." And the wind began to blow. It was an icy cold wind. And then the man started feeling cold, so he put on another coat. And the wind began to blow even more. And he put on another coat. Just kept piling on more and more coats. And then the sun said, "See, watch me now." And the sun became hot. And the man took off one layer of coats. And it became hotter. He took off another layer of coats. It became hotter. And finally the man just took off all of his coats. So the sun smiled at the wind. You see, I am more powerful. So a devotee is by nature compassionate, which as we see from Maharaj Pariksit. And why is Maharaj Pariksit so compassionate? Because, as Srila Prabhupada explains, in the very beginning of life, he was cultivating this sense of compassion. It was described that when he was a child, he used to play with little Krishna dolls. He used to play with Krishna as a child, from the very beginning of his life. So, the beginning to create a good population, actually, we look at the pages of the Light of the Bhagavad. Srila Prabhupada makes a very interesting statement. He says that the governments, simply by changing one party to the next and making different laws, cannot bring about equal distribution of wealth. When we think about it, so much of the crime in this world today is because people are in poverty and they're feeling desperate, and they fall into these sinful habits like drug addiction. So, but Srila Prabhupada says, if we want equal distribution of wealth, then the government should spend its resources in helping create good character in the minds of the people. This good character in the minds of the people are the basis of good government. So this is why the process of this Harinam Sankirtan, the Sankirtan movement, is not just some sentimental, fanatical, wispy-eyed, hippie-eyed sentiment, but has a very practical application of restructuring the entire human society, so that it becomes a sane human civilization. Right now, the world order has is not supporting this. So it is our duty as Vaishnavas to vigorously preach this message of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. It's like had the opportunity to go with Prem Vilas yesterday to a university, and it was just so enlivening to see the fruits of his vigorous preaching, that these young people coming together to taste the nectar of Krishna consciousness. In fact, I had a beautiful conversation with one man. He was from the Quaker tradition, to Christian denomination. And I was also born in that tradition, so we had something in common, so we had a chance to speak. And one of the principles, he was saying that, he described how he was attracted to those people who could actually speak outside their false ego. They could actually take away their ego. And I was just thinking, I just wish so much I had the chance to hear Srila Prabhupada speak. Of course, now he has, Prem Vilas Prabhu has given him Srila Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita, so now he has an opportunity to hear him speak. But I was discussing with him that actually, yes, because when someone speaks outside their false ego, there's tremendous potency. And it reminds me of Srila Prabhupada when he came over in the Jaladuta. He had this beautiful prayer, Makini Bhagavad Dharma, when he says, "My dear Lord Krishna." And this, if we absorb these words of Srila Prabhupada, we'll actually be able to understand the mood by which one can share Krishna consciousness with others. In this prayer, Srila Prabhupada says, "My dear Lord Krishna, you're so kind upon this useless soul. I do not know why you've brought me here, but now you can do whatever you like with me. I guess you must have some business here. Otherwise, why would you bring me to this terrible place?" Most people, they come to America, right? They think, let's go here for economic development. Let's come here and have a better, higher level of sense gratification. And here, Srila Prabhupada is seen through the eyes of Scripture. He's seeing it as a terrible place. Why? Because most of the population, Srila Prabhupada continues, most of the population here is covered by the material modes of passion and ignorance. Absorbed in material life, they think themselves to be very happy and satisfied. Therefore, they have no taste. No taste for the transcendental message of Vasudeva. We can even see in our own lives when we get in the mode of passion. Right? We don't want to hear it. We don't want to chant our rounds. We don't want to read Prabhupada's books because we're so much in that fruitive mentality. We want to enjoy the result of our activities in some way. But then Srila Prabhupada is only by your grace, but I know your causeless mercy can do anything because you are the supreme mystic. Only by your causeless mercy will my words become pure. And not, it says, "O spiritual master, O supreme Lord, O spiritual master of the universe, I can only repeat your message. And only by your causeless mercy will my words become pure. And I know for sure that if your words, this transcendental message, penetrates their hearts, they will certainly feel enlivened and become liberated from all unhappy conditions of life." So this is a great lesson for us. That, as Vaishnavas, it is not by our power that we can touch the heart of another soul and get out of our false ego. It's only by the power of Krishna that He gives us the ability. When we allow Krishna, when we allow Srila Prabhupada, when we allow our spiritual masters to shine through, that we can become a messenger to bring forth this message. By their grace, and with that humble, submissive attitude, we can become instruments in the hands of the Lord. There's a beautiful Christian prayer. "O Lord, make me an instrument of thy peace. Where there's hatred, let me show love. Where there is doubt, let me bring faith. Where there is wrong, let me bring forgiveness." And there's so many. So in this way, a devotee aspires to become an instrument. Really, I remember Mother Teresa one time said in a prayer, and she said, it's actually here in Columbus. I was reading this article many years ago, and it touched my heart. She said, "We want." She said, "Someone said to her, we should become saintly." She said, "Saintliness is for everyone." She said, "How did you become a saint?" She said, "Saintliness is for everyone. Everyone should become a saint. Everyone should become a pencil in the hand of God." So we must all aspire. The pencil does not take. When the poet writes the beautiful verse, the pencil does not take credit. Oh, just see what beautiful verse I've written. No, the pencil is simply the humble servant of the poet. So, in this way, we all become instruments in the hands of our beloved spiritual masters. Then we also can become heroic, like Maharaj Pariksit, and fight back. Like here, Srila Prabhupada is saying, the devotee should not sit back and be callous. Right? Let me read this again. This is very important. He says, above all, he says, he says, this does not mean that the leaders of society, the executive heads, the learned and intelligent men, above all, the devotees of the Lord, should sit down tightly and become callous. Right? Sit down tightly. That image of sitting down tightly, just for our own spiritual life. No, not sit down tightly, not become callous to the actions of color, but vigorously preach the glories of the Lord. Thank you all for your association and for your allowing me to come here and share with you some thoughts and realizations. I'm sure all of you are a rich mind, and you say you go to gold mine, right? You do a diamond mine, right? So you want to dig into that diamond mine to get the diamonds. So I'm praying now that for some of you to share the diamonds that Krishna has revealed to you in your hearts. And bless me with those realizations. Or thoughts or questions, reflections or feedbacks or take-backs.
Thank you, Prabhu. So that was excellent class. I really loved, your explanation on compassion and about rigorous preaching of Krishna consciousness. I really appreciate that. I had a couple of thoughts. Maybe that can also turn into questions. So I like the idea of doing the drama of that. Debate between reject or what was the other thing? Reject or reform. Yeah, of somebody who is degraded, who is maybe drug abuser or any criminal, whatever. But in practical world, it's not that easy. Sometimes, or maybe we are not at that level of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who just or Nityananda Prabhu, who just wants to spread mercy, regardless of their conditioning or their level of behavior. But you didn't complete that loop. That what is right? What do you think? Let's say, if somebody who is maybe some homeless guy doing drugs comes in the temple today, and we accept them, we want them, to transform their lives, but now at the same time they are causing some troubles. They're maybe not behaving appropriately, they're damaging the property. Is there a boundary to which we show the compassion to those, or we just say no, that's fine, we tolerate?
There's no boundaries to compassion. However, there's also And Srila Prabhupada said that the temple should not be places for the crazies and the lazy. And someone comes and we give them an opportunity, give them some prasadam. But if they don't reform, we can't allow them to create a disturbance. You know, to go out and their sevaks. You know. So when I said that there's no compassion to boundaries, I meant to say that by then excluding someone from this environment is a form of compassion. It gives them an opportunity to reflect. You know, why am I being excluded? They have to come to a standard. And it's interesting. It's a very interesting point because and now we have to understand that there's two things in the Bhagavatam when we read these pages. And I asked this question to Radhika Ramamba when she came to Nirvana. There was a description of I think when Krishna married Satya, one of his 5 queens was married. So in the dowry, it describes that the king gave, so many unmarried girls, slaves. And I was thinking, Prabhu, how can we explain this? Giving unmarried girls away, as a dowry. To explain that in the Bhagavatam, you have to be able to discriminate between what is descriptive and what is prescriptive. So in this age, we're not prescribing, giving away unmarried girls and dowries. Has there been any wedding in the past, 100 years or 200 years ago? We're not prescribing. It's description of a civilization that existed at one time. And the Prabhupada explains later on that the slaves were treated as part of the members of the family. It's not the conception of slave that we have in our experience in the past 100 years, 200 years of Western civilization.
They were friends.
They were friends of the queen. Exactly. Right. They were treated as family members. So getting back to your question, and I realize that was a little bit of a divergence, but at the same time, I think it makes a salient point that when we read in the Bhagavatam, we have to understand, what is the Siddhanta? What is the prescription that for this age that Srila Prabhupada is giving us? And we know that from the pages of the Bhagavatam that Srila Prabhupada says that in capital punishment, there was a form of compassion because by killing the criminal for their sinful activities, they would not have to suffer again in the next life. Based on conception of the soul, when you had a civilization which understood and embraced the conception of the eternality of the soul, when the king killed someone for a sinful activity, for a crime, it was a form of compassion because then that soul would not have to suffer again in its next life. It could just pick up where it left off before having committed that sinful activity. Now, sure.
Countries where there are tough laws, like Saudi Arabia, and you mentioned Singapore, Japan, people don't even, the lowest degrees of crime, there's practically no crime. Now, somebody rapes and then you have to go to a legal court and for 10 years and whoever has the money is going to win and there's going to be demonstration and this and that and the case drags on for 20 years. That's not really a deterrent. There is a rape, there is an evidence for that rape, there is a complete clear evidence for that rape. You hang the person or you stone the person on the marketplace, and then that acts as a deterrent. So that's what Manu Samhita recommends. That's what my understanding is. Capital punishment is necessary. And you should have tough law, very tough laws against drug trafficking, rapes, murder, things like which are really kind of detrimental. The sixth sin, the cardinal sins. Prabhupada explains in Bhagavad Gita: one who gives arson, one who kills, one who kidnaps, one who rapes, one who plunders money, one who steals. These things should have very, very strict laws. And so countries like Qatar or Saudi Arabia or Kuwait, there are such strict laws that nobody needs to lock any door. And these countries, they're rich, they have wealth, they don't even tax people. There's no taxes. You don't have to pay to the government anything. The government is rich. And I like the system of justice where you have incremental punishment. You have a first warning, second warning. So in America, you do drugs, you go for 2 years, then you get 5 years, then you get 10 years, and then you're done. So, but the problem with democratic system, which is in India and America, which I feel is the court cases and legal fees and attorneys, whoever has the money is going to get the justice. And I have seen that even in India and America. And this whole court system and legal system and attorney system, human rights system and judicial watch system, oh my God, there's nothing really you can do. Everybody has free speech. Even if a king or the government wants to impose the right thing, there will be 50 people writing for amnesty and 50 people writing for human rights, and the media, which is all paid off. So this whole thing of the media, it becomes a circus ultimately. The administration of justice becomes circus. But yeah, so I don't know. I don't agree with that.
That's why I use the examples of Singapore. They have the murder rate and strict laws. Japan is the same way. And it's interesting that like you said, when you have strict laws, what is created now is this huge industry, this huge business. There's one devotee who worked for the prison system, okay, and he told me the story when he first joined. He was a civil engineer, so he started doing civil engineering for prisons. So when he went to inspect a prison in Michigan with a supervisor, he said the job would have taken 3 days, but his supervisor stretched it out to 2 weeks. What to see the cheating that's going on here. This prison industry is an industry for making money, for filling many people's pockets. And just think of all the industries that this lax system of punishment creates. It creates money for the lawyers. It creates money for wine shops. I mean that's something that Srila Prabhupada is very strong about. Just close down this whole industry. Why create an industry that so many crimes are a result of drug abuse? I mean, do you have any examples of someone going into a school in Saudi Arabia or United Emirates and killing children? Just like we saw last week in Nashville, Tennessee. All these shootings, school shootings. And yet we say, oh, we're the most civilized. We're the most democratic. But look at what's happening. By having these lax laws, it's created an environment which is so socially unstable. I'm just supporting your point. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Right. So for devotees, we we as brahmanas, and as a preaching movement, we have to remind ourselves of the necessity of to preach, spread Krishna consciousness, because we know as this is the ultimate form of compassion. That yes, the governments will make their laws. We're not in a position to change them. I mean, for example, if just take for example Tulsi Gabbard or any devotee, Vaishnava wanted to run for president, and their first platform, to become president, death penalty to drug offenders. Would they get voted in? Of course not. But if they did get voted in, they would see, a Vaishnava would see that become a systematic way of introducing Krishna consciousness, and then gradually by doing that over probably would take generations, then society could evolve to that point at a scale where you have these things in place. Or maybe it will just take a decade. Who knows? But it definitely, like your question, definitely points to the urgency. When we look at the news and we look at everything, the urgency that is there for spreading Krishna consciousness. Does that help at all? Does that satisfy your inquiry? Are you sure?
When I was studying verses first week, I came across Chaitanya Charan Prabhu, his grace. He talks about how Brahmanas can guide the state in today's day and age. That was a really fascinating viewpoint, and he gave example like there is either a bottom-down approach or a top-up approach, and one of the suggestions was like how like some Catholic churches have like think tanks, and we should like discuss certain issues as devotees within ISKCON, and at least within ISKCON start implementing such decisions.
Oh, that's a brilliant idea. That's wonderful.
Yeah, I just found it on YouTube, and it's like his intellectual classes are really stimulating, like intellectually stimulating for me. So
yes.
I love listening to him.
I'm very blessed to have his association.
Yeah. And the other point that stood out for me was the power of surrender is shown in these verses. Like because Kali surrendered, so reform or not kill Kali. So
Yes.
I think like it's powerful to surrender. And I found a cute story from the Mahabharata where this one little sparrow surrenders to Krishna before the war begins. And the Leela that Lord Krishna does, like, he just shoots an arrow towards an elephant, and the elephant's bell falls on the sparrow with her 4 little offsprings. And Arjuna was bewildered, why is Krishna doing that? But the whole reason was after 3 weeks. So first he asked the sparrow to collect food enough for 3 weeks, and then after 3 weeks they were still safe under that bell of the elephant. Just a short version of that story. Because the sparrow surrendered, Krishna wanted to protect the sparrow. I just thought it's a cute story showing the importance of surrender.
So have we dived deeply enough today into the Srimad Bhagavatam? Does anyone want to spin any more?
I think one point that stood out to me was that when you, in the verse it said that one can artificially restrict oneself from these sense objects, but it does not mean the taste for these sense objects will go away. Like I feel like all these laws in some countries are there, but it does not mean that the citizens of those countries are exactly following the principles of dharma. Like, I mean, they also have some other forms of sense gratification, and like unless and until they take to Krishna consciousness or any form of God consciousness, the society is doomed, I feel.
Yes. What's the point of leading lives of quiet desperation? It's also violence. Well, thank you, Babus, for your association. Shri Bhagavatam ki
Jai.
ki
Jai.
Radhanandanatamar ki
Jai.
Gaur Premanand
Hari Hari
His
Bol.
Kripamaya Prabhu ki
Jai.
His Kripamaya Maharaj ki
Jai.